Hey everybody, what is going on? Hexlex here, got another Master Duel video for you. This is an edition of This Week in Master Duel, coming a little bit earlier than anticipated, but we do have some breaking news to cover here. So yesterday, today is the day that I'm recording this, but yesterday, the day this is actually going out, we got a pretty big announcement, as it tends to be, that is going to be the announcement for the upcoming Forbidden and Limited List update. And I gotta say, what's on here actually surprised me quite a bit. These were a lot of changes that I was expecting, but not until a little bit later. But nevertheless, I am very pleasantly surprised. So let's not waste any more time. Let's go ahead and dive right on into this update notice. So as always, the cards that are going to be having the number of copies decreased are going to be in blue, and white text will be for cards in which the maximum number of copies has increased. So right off the bat, we have something that actually does not happen terribly often in Master Duel. Although, to be fair, I don't think it really needs to happen that often. And that's for a card to get banned. And that's going to be Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Calamity, going from 3 copies down to 0. Let's go ahead and cover all of the cards that have been hit, and then we'll go back through and talk about them all a little bit more in detail, right? Alright, when it comes to cards that are going to be limited, there's 2. It's Wanted, Seeker of Sinful Spoils, and Snake Eye Ash. And those 3 are actually all of the cards that are going from more copies down to fewer, right? Again, the Calamity going from 3 to 0, and Wanted and Ash both going from 2 now down to 1. We do have some other cards to cover, though. As far as cards that are going to be semi-limited, Sprite Jet going from 1 copy to 2. Again, the text is in white, so it's increasing the number of copies. And then down here we have number of card switch limit on the number of copies will be lifted. So these cards are all at 3 now, each from 2. I think C might have been at 1, but Sky Striker Mobilize Engage goes from 2 to 3. Perform Pal Monkey Board I think might have also been at 1 to 3. Rite of Armiseer going from 2 to 3. And then Blackwing Steam the Cloak I think was at 1, now going to 3. So there is actually a lot to unpack with this list here. I'll start by kind of talking about the list as a whole. I think that this is great. I've actually seen, not very many, mind you, but I've seen a couple people complain that they should have done more. I think that this has all of the hits that I think are majorly warranted in the current format. That's Calamity to 0, and then Wanted and Snake Eye Ash each to 1. I've seen some people say that, like, Flamberge should have gone to 0. I vehemently disagree with this, and I always have. Not Flamberge in particular, but the idea of, like, hitting an archetype or a deck with the intention of just, like, it being unplayable, right? Because let's be real, without Flamberge, there is literally 0 reason to ever play Snake Eye cards. The deck, the whole archetype becomes unplayable. And again, there are a lot of people out there who are like, good, that's what should happen. But I think this is very poor ban list design. A deck should still be playable for people who want to explore it, but also reined in if it needs to be. Snake Eye absolutely needed to be reined in, even beyond Ash and Wanted going to 2. I'm not arguing that Snake Eye should have gotten 0 hits, but a hit like Flamberge to 0 that just outright kills the deck and gives you no reason. Because here's what I think a lot of people don't think about, right? Like, because a lot of people are like, oh, I dislike this deck. I want it to be gone forever, so I support Flamberge to 0. Without thinking about the implications of what would happen with, like, future hits with that kind of a mentality, right? Like, let's say that the next deck that's tier 1 you really, really like. Like, I don't know, pick your favorite archetype, give it tier 1 worthy legacy support, and let's say that's the new deck. Now, all of a sudden, let's say the ban list comes and they hit that deck to a point where it is unplayable. Let's say they put both their starter and their boss monster to 0, right? You would be very sad about that, wouldn't you? You would be very sad because now not only can you not play your archetype, your deck in a tier 1 fashion, you just don't get to play it at all anymore. And that's kind of what I'm getting at here, right? Again, it's I've said this word before, and a lot of people haven't liked it, but I'm going to maintain it. I think it's childish. I think it is downright childish to say, I don't like this, so nobody should ever be allowed to play it, ever. Again, it's not saying it shouldn't be, a deck like Snake Eye shouldn't be reined in, but again, I don't support any archetype becoming unplayable after a ban list, so that's just my 2 cents on that. Let's go ahead and talk about the hits specifically now. Hot Red Dragon Archfiend Calamity 2-0, I think this is a pretty good hit. So this is something that's I've talked about before as well, the notion that a card does not necessarily need to be part of a tier 1 or even 2 or even 3 deck to warrant being hit. And I think Calamity is a prime example of this, right? Like, let's be real. You know, decks like Naturio Horus or archetypes that are subbing in a Calamity package like Super Heavy Samurai or Manadium, none of those builds are tiered. Like, Horus Naturia is not even a tier 3 deck. It is a rogue deck. Manadium or Super Heavy Samurai variants that focus on Calamity are, in my opinion, suboptimal variants of those decks. Really, when it comes down to it, there was no deck that I would consider tiered that was consistently ending on the Calamity lock. In spite of that, I am still in support of this ban, because I think that there does come a point where a card creates such non-game states, right? That, and that's kind of like the only thing that it does, that even if it isn't part of a strategy that's even tiered in any way, it still is worthy of a hit. Bishbalkan is a great example of this. Bishbalkan FTK was nowhere even close to tiered. I would consider that like the bottom of Rogue when it was legal. Like, not even something that I would ever consider for competitive play ever, and yet at the same time, Bishbalkan to 0 was still a fine hit because it really only facilitated FTKs, i.e. non-game states. Now, I do think that sometimes people use that phrase a little bit loosely. I've seen people call Sprite Elf a card that makes non-game states. No, I don't think conditional targeted protection is a non-game state. I vehemently disagree with that. But, you know, Calamity, which says you cannot activate cards or effects on the field, yeah, that's a little bit more of a non-game state. An example that's legal now that I've brought up before, and I'm sure I'm going to get comments about this again, is Albion Sanctifier. That is a card that creates non-game states by putting cards that are not intended to lock the opponent by putting cards that are intended to lock you onto the opponent's field and thereby locking them. Now, as always, different people will be like, well, just ban Gimmick Puppet Nightmare. No, because there are, beyond Gimmick Puppet Nightmare, there are lots of these cards that create these conditional locks. I've always used DD Orthos as an example because it fiend locks and it's lingering for the turn, and that's a card you can't ban because then DD doesn't get to do combo lines. But anyway, my whole main point here is that sometimes, even if a card is not part of a tier 1 deck or strategy, it is still worthy of being hit, and I do think that Calamity was one of those cards. So, this card going to 0, that is a-okay with me. I'm perfectly fine with that, in spite of the fact that I have played quite a few Calamity decks. TG and Horus Naturia. I love those decks. Those are both a lot of fun. But I don't think that those, I don't think Calamity should be around. Long story short. Okay, let's talk about the Snake Eye hit. So this will be pretty interesting to talk about. Wanted and Snake Eye Ash both going to 1. Something that I think is absolutely worth noting is that despite the fact that Master Duel has had Snake Eye the least amount of time out of all of the 3 formats, Master Duel, TCG, and OCG, that it's got hit the hardest. Because even in the OCG, Snake Eye Ash, I believe, is still at 2, while Wanted is at 1. But here, both cards are going to 1. And this is going to matter a lot more than some people might think. Again, I've seen some people say that, oh, Limit 1 Festival showed us this deck is still consistent. Well, one, Limit 1 Festival is not a good gauge of power for a format because everything's at 1. I don't feel like I have to explain that, but apparently I do. But moreover than that, it's not just about having fewer starters, right? Of course, that is going to be the most notable impact of this hit, is that a deck which I already found, without including a third Poplar, was already starting to brick a little bit more often, is now going to brick more often. And it's true that you can supplement some cards potentially were Arthau for more searching, and maybe some others like Small World. I've seen a couple of people say oh, I might try Small World, and Small World is something I've kind of considered in Snake Eye before Bonfire came out. But long story short, the lists post ban lists are definitely going to be much less consistent. But again, it's not even just consistency, right? With Snake Eye Ash in particular being at 1, this now becomes a point of a bit of an issue when it comes to grind games, right? Or really any game that's going to go beyond your turn 1 end board. Because in order to have a follow-up line, a lot of the time, you need to have a Snake Eye Ash. And one thing in particular, right, is that I I believe, so if you're activating the effect of Original Sinful Spoils, and you put back the one Snake Eye Ash in your graveyard, I'm pretty sure you can't then search it, right? Because it's not a condition to even put the card back. The two effects happen, like, simultaneously. So, not only will you have to original send back the Snake Eye Ash, not even for the same turn you get that search, but for an even later follow-up turn, now, like, called by on the Snake Eye Ash is so brutal, because it not only negates the effect, but also banishing it will make it, like, very much more difficult to access for the Snake Eye archetype. Yeah, I think this hit is bigger than some people might think. That said, I don't think that this is... I don't think this is enough to push Snake Eye out of tier 1 at the same time. And if it does, I think that Snake Eye will, like, barely be out of tier 1. Like, it will be, like, by far the best tier 2 deck, if it does even end up dropping out of tier 1. But another thing I want to point out is that Wanted is also a Rescue Ace hit, by the way, because Rescue Ace really likes to start with the Diabell into the Poplar to establish their engine. That way they can special the Hydrant and then use it to search Airlifter and still normal summon Airlifter, right? You can't normal summon Hydrant and that be the only card in your hand and have like a full Rescue Ace board because, well, you then can't summon the Airlifter. But again, by specialing Hydrant off of the original off of Diabell, often searched off of Wanted, there you go, you're starting to see how this is a Rescue Ace hit too. So, I think both those decks will probably still be tier 1, but the significant thing that I think happens as a result of this is that the power level of tier 1, the power level gap, I should say, between tier 1 and tier 2 just got a whole lot smaller, to the point where it's not going to feel, because this meta, I feel, was pretty diverse, and yet, at the same time, Snake Eye did still stand as, like, pretty far and above the best deck, with Rescue Ace not too far behind it. But while, again, I think those two decks are probably still going to be tier 1, that gap shortens so much, and the meta is going to feel a lot more diverse than it... well, it already is a diverse meta, like, let's be real, it is. And it's going to feel a lot more diverse than it even is now, because, again, Snake Eye will not feel as much stronger than everything else, right? So I know a lot of people don't like diverse metas, or some people don't like diverse metas, but I know a lot of people do value that. I'm in the latter. I very much value diverse metas because I just like playing a lot of different decks, because I kind of get bored playing one deck too much, right? So I'm really looking forward to these changes for that reason. I'm still going to be playing with Snake Eye. I still really like that deck, and I can't wait to lab it out some more with the post-ban list hits. But again, more than even that, I'm definitely looking forward to what I think will be a more diverse metagame. That's my big meta prediction, is that it will be a lot more diverse, which, again, a lot of people tend to like. So I think a lot of people will find it to be a good meta post these ban list changes. So... let's see. Anything else I want to talk about as far as the limits go? Not particularly. I think I said my piece. As far as, like, again, these hits are good, and they didn't really need to hit anything else. Poplar ban. That's another thing I've seen quite a bit. Poplar ban, I like a lot more than the Flamberge ban, but I still think is very unnecessary. I think that these limits are going to be... fine. I think that, honestly, Snake Eye probably doesn't need more hits after this, as I imagine later stuff that comes out will continue to naturally power creep it out of the format over time, or rather, not even out of the format, but down to, like, tier 2, and with enough time over multiple seasons, like tier 3 eventually. But we'll see. I'm very open to being wrong about that. If Snake Eye does end up needing more hits... might have to just start limiting Diabell after that, I don't know. I don't like saying that because I really like Diabell as a generic kind of engine. But I can't really think of anything. Because, like, OSS, Original Sin, you already usually play at 1. Again, pre-ban list hits that might change later. Temple, you already play at 1. Oak, you already play at 1. Flamberge, you play at 2, but if you limited it, it really wouldn't be that big of a deal. So I think that hitting Diabell makes the next most amount of sense, in my opinion. Again, if we're wanting to keep Snake Eye intact as an archetype that's still playable, which I think is what we want. Or, it's what I want anyway. I think that's generally good ban list design. Cards to be semi-limited. Sprite Jet. Ooh. Ooh. After 1,000 years of laying dormant. Finally, we have awoken. Sprite Jet finally going from 1 to 2. Of course, I think Sprite needs many, many more unhits, but you know what? This is a start, and it's one I am very excited for. I think that, honestly, the best unhit for Sprite would be Nimble Beaver at this point, even more than Blue or Jet. And it might sound weird, right, for Nimble Beaver to be more of a priority for Sprite than unlimiting Sprite cards. But the thing about Sprite that you gotta know, right, is that Sprite is an archetype of extenders. The only one-card starter that the deck has is literally called starter. Everything else kind of needs at least another level 2 monster on the field to really get plays going, except for Nimble Beaver. And that's why that card got limited, right? Is because that was Sprite's, again, aside from starter, Sprite's really only one-card starter. So, again, I'm not dissatisfied at Jet going from 1 to 2. In fact, I am beyond thrilled about it. I am very, very eager for the return of Sprite. Not that Sprite really went too far anyway, but I think that we definitely need more Sprite unlimits. Jet could absolutely... I've said it before, I'll say it again. Beaver, Blue, and Jet could be at 3, with Elf still legal, and Sprite would be fine. And if you want totally awesome back, I don't even think that's a matter of banning Elf. I think it's more of a matter of banning Ronin. Because Ronin, let's be real, in the past has been the thing that facilitates frogs being able to do dumb FTKs and combos. And also facilitates Frog being a really good engine in Sprite. Without Ronin, Frogs really are not worth playing in Sprite. So I think with a Ronin ban, we could also have totally back. But long story short, I'm so excited to see Sprite Jet here going from 1 to 2. That is, I really, really hope a sign of more good things to come for the Sprite archetype. Okay, cards that are going to 3. Sky Striker Mobilize Engage, I think is a really cool one. Because, I've said this before too, the majority, I think all but one of Sky Striker's cards could be at 3 and the deck would still be completely fine. It's from a balance standpoint. The one card that I don't think can come back is Mecha Hornets, or, no, it's Hornet Drones, yeah. The Hornet Drones, mostly because then you can facilitate Sky Striker as an engine in a lot of different archetypes and just use the token to start making link plays, right? But, yeah, Engage, totally fine to be back at 3. And indeed, I can't wait to mess around with Sky Striker a little bit more with that. Of course, we do also know that Engage recently got an animation, right? So that was kind of a hint that we're probably just going to get the Engage back to 3. Oh, speaking of cards getting animations, one thing I've seen some people say is, where's Heavy Storm? Heavy Storm isn't on here. Isn't that going to get unbanned? In the past, this happened multiple times in Master Duel, when a quote-unquote legacy card, like an old card that's been on the list for quite a while, gets unhit, they tend to release a new selection pack that has that card in it. And about the time they announce that pack is when they're like, by the way, this card is unbanned. I know it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I don't know why they wouldn't just announce it here either, but that's how they tend to do it. So I would expect Heavy Storm to come back at about the same time. We just haven't seen it announced yet. So, Performer Pal Monkey Board. I don't really have very many opinions on this. I didn't really play when Pepe... Actually, I was just leaving the TCG when Pepe was, like, blowing up as the next Tier 0 deck. So I don't really have any, like, past trauma when it comes to Monkey Board. Yeah, no, this card is completely fine to be at 3. It does a lot of nothing right now in current Master Duel. In 2016, placing a card in your Pentascale and being able to search was very much too good. Nowadays, not really. Rite of Armiseer. Ooh, I am very excited about this one. And in fact, is this the first time that Master Duel has undone a pre-hit? Because Rite of Armiseer, when it was introduced to the game, came in semi-limited. But now it's being unlimited. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, and I might be, this might be the first time Master Duel is undoing a pre-hit. And we've actually talked about this in recent ban list videos, right? About how Adventure is definitely fine as far as like an engine. It is conditional what kind of deck you can put it in, right? Because of course, Rite of Armiseer cannot be activated the same turn one of your normal summoned monsters uses its effect. Similarly, you can't activate or you can't use normal summoned monsters effects when you activate after you activate Rite of Armiseer. So There are a lot of cards, a lot of decks that do depend on normal summoning their starter to get their plays going, and as a result, I don't think Adventure is too generic. Not so much, you also have to have room in your deck for all the Adventure cards, which is, as they're becoming, you know, more and more unlimited, is becoming a bigger and bigger ask, right? But I think that's completely fine for an engine like this to take up a significant amount of deck space. Yeah, no, I think it's a phenomenal change to the ban list. Phantom Knight definitely loves it and will get stronger. Synchron, that's another deck that I actually haven't played yet, that I would like to at some point, that often uses Adventure that gets buffed from this. Yeah, that's the other thing too, is that there's not really any tiered deck that's consistently making use of the Adventure engine, right? So it's not like there's another deck out there that's just waiting to abuse it now that Rite of Armistier is at 3. No, it's completely fine. Very, very good change. And Blackwing Steam the Cloak, also totally fine to be at 3. Yeah, I don't really have much else to say about that. I don't even think Blackwing uses it, right? Although maybe they will know that it's at 3. I don't know that much about Blackwing beyond like the basic combo lines. So either way, it's definitely a card that is cool and worth cooking with. So I think that just about covers everything I have to say about this ban list. Overall, 2 thumbs up from me. Everything I wanted to see get hit is on here. There's not anything major missing, in my opinion. And the unlimits are all phenomenal. I am hugely supportive of this ban list, and I would love to see more like it. So let me know what you think, though, of this ban list in the comment section below. That is going to end up being it for this video. Thank you so very much for watching. Let us now move to our outro. Hey everybody, thank you so much for watching all the way to the end of the video. That means a lot to me. It's also a great way to support the channel, so thank you very much in that way as well. If you're interested in supporting the channel in other ways, like the very special patrons that I am thanking here, you can do so by checking out some of the links in the description. One of those goes to the Patreon, where you can join these fine folk and support the channel that way. I do post daily content over on Patreon, so you do get something for supporting there. And if you're interested, I also have a coaching tier option as well. Details again will be on Patreon in the link below. Also in the description linked below is my Twitch page where I stream a few times a week. You can go ahead and check that out, follow or subscribe over there if you ever want to catch me live. You'll also find my second YouTube channel if you feel like subscribing over there to watch some of the Twitch VODs as well as some additional non-Yu-Gi-Oh related content that I make over there. Again, any of those links you want to check out is all a great way of supporting. But again, even if you don't do that, just watching was also a fantastic way to support. And once again, I have to thank you so very much. But in any case, this is Hexlex. I'm going to be signing out, and I'm hoping you have a fantastic day.